Oh, it's recording. Okay, good. Hi, friends. It's Joy here. Congratulations on making it this far. We are almost done our time here. This is my research study, my capstone for 499W, from playground to Discord, adult belonging and online gaming communities. Let's get into it. So I started with a really simple question. Are online friendships really friendships? Are they real friendships? And there's still, I feel like there's still this assumption or a stigma surrounding online friendships that they are somehow less meaningful. And I wanted to understand if that was actually true, um, especially from the perspective of people who are actively part of these types of communities. So I'm going to walk through why this question matters, how I explored it, what I found, and what it means. So belonging is a fundamental need. It's a fundamental human need. It's something we seek across the lifespan. When we're young and when we're old, we're all seeking belonging. It doesn't necessarily mean that at every moment we're looking for belonging, but as a whole, we're looking for it. But at the same time, more and more of our social interactions are happening in digital spaces. Everything's digital these days. You do your banking, your grocery shopping, your school, your everything, mortgage, pay your bills. Everything's digital these days. It's just the world that we live in. But unfortunately, research hasn't fully caught up to how meaningful um, like relationships that are formed in digital spaces are and can actually be. So my guiding question was, how do adults experience belonging in Discord communities, and how does it compare to childhood friendships? So research consistently shows that belonging is a fundamental human need, as I said, and this plays an important role in emotional well-being and in relationship development across the lifespan. Um, Theorists Roy Baumeister and Mark Leary proposed the need to belong theory, which basically it argues that humans are naturally more motivated to form and maintain meaningful relationships or meaningful interpersonal relationships. Um, and more research suggests that online communities can also provide genuine emotional support, social connection, and a sense of belonging, particularly when individuals share common interests or participate in collaborative activities. So shared activities such as gaming often help strengthen social bonds because they're creating these opportunities for communication, for cooperation, for repeated interaction over time. Now, however, while there is growing research on online communities broadly, research specifically focused on Discord-based community gaming communities and adult belonging experiences, um, that's fairly limited. So this study aims to help contribute to the growing area of research. To explore this, I used a qualitative approach focused on participants' lived experiences. So my method, this study included 5 adult participants aged 30 to 49, um, all active in gaming Discord gaming communities, I should say. I conducted a semi-structured interviews, which allowed participants to describe their experiences in their own words, while still focusing on key areas like connection, trust, and belonging. And these interviews, each of them lasted about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. It was great. I then used thematic analysis to identify patterns across responses. I believe that a thematic analysis was easier due to the qualitative nature of my research. The goal is depth in meeting, not generalization. I didn't want to get numbers and, I didn't want to get a bell curve and I didn't want to get percentages. I wanted to know a more personal feel, a more personal understanding of what people think and feel about their friendships, from current and when they were children. So I focused on patterns of connection and emotional closeness and basically how friendships form and develop and how participants compared their online relationships to their childhood friendships. And that picture back there, the one with the I love you mug, that's my Discord picture. I thought that would be fun to throw that in there. So to better understand these patterns, I used a few different visual tools. I used a heat map, a bar graph, thematic map. The heat map shows how strongly themes appeared across participants. I ended up with 9 separate themes, but then I put them into a cluster of 3. The bar graph shows the overall frequency of the themes, and the thematic map shows how these themes connect conceptually. So here's the heat map. This one's pretty neat because the darker shading reflects stronger thematic presence. And what's important here is that all these themes were across the board. All themes were there. As you can see, there's no zeros, there's no like white spots. But what varies is how strongly the themes were expressed. So it's important to remember that darker equals stronger thematic presence. And here's my bar graph. It just helps you visualize the overall strength of each theme and across all the participants, and it reinforces which themes were more prominent. And finally, here's where you can see all my different themes. This is the thematic map, shows the theme cluster into broader groups. I have how connection forms, what belonging feels like, context shaping connection, or foundations of connection, experience of belonging, structure relationships. And this illustrates how different aspects of connection and belonging relate to one another. So what does this actually show? The central finding is that online friendships are real friendships. Each participant consistently described these relationships as genuine, as meaningful, as emotionally significant, as personal, as precious. Um, Participant one said, "They're my friends. They're not just online friends," and that overall, that was the feeling that all the participants would say. And it was, they don't make that distinction of, oh, I'm hanging out with my online friends today. Oh, I'm hanging out with my in-person friends today. No, it was just, oh, I'm hanging out with my friends today. Oh, where are your friends? Oh, they're online. Just to be able to tell them where they are, but it's never, those are my online friends. There's no like divide, no distinction. These relationships develop in similar ways to in-person friendships as well, through consistency and communication and shared experiences. Trust builds over time, often without participants even realizing it. As you can see, participant 3 said, it just builds over time. You don't even notice it's happening. One of the most interesting findings was a developmental shift. So childhood friendships are often based on proximity, who you're around. So you have your neighborhood friends because they're there. You go outside. You're a kid, you go outside, you're playing with the chalk on the sidewalk. And another kid comes by and says, "Hey, can I play with you?" "Yeah, sure, okay, let's play." And then you're friends because you're in the same neighborhood. You have access to one another frequently. It's the same as at school. You go to school, you go to playground, and the kids are playing, and hey, can I play with you? Yeah, okay. You want to be my friend? Sure. Do that at the park. But in adulthood, friendships become more intentional, and they're based on shared interest and through connection. Um, you choose your friends when you're an adult. You know, you don't have to be friends with your next door neighbor. I don't really know one of my neighbors and I've lived in this house for almost 7 years. I know her. I don't remember her name. I, you know, but I'm intentional in that. Participant one says, as a kid, you're just friends because you're there. And participant four says, now it's more about who you actually connect with. And honestly, the only consistent difference identified was the lack of physical presence. But even that didn't seem to really limit emotional closeness. It was just like a different form of connection. Participant two said the only difference is I can hug them. And I can attest to that. That's how I feel about several of my online friends. I say online friends because I'm explaining to you, but I don't make the distinction either. They're my friends. But because they're online, I can't go get a cup of coffee with them or give them a hug when they're sad or when they're celebrating something huge. And that part's hard sometimes. Another important finding is that belonging isn't tied to Discord as a platform. It's more tied to specific relationships, and participants described stronger connection in the smaller Discord settings, more familiar groups, rather than larger servers. Because while larger servers, they felt less personal, and it's similar to experiences you have. Um, in 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 real life, in person, because it's like you get together with a few friends at a coffee shop and it's just the three of you. You guys are going to be able to have more meaningful conversations, more intimacy, more one-on-one. Whereas if you're going to a big party or you're going to a concert, you're not going to be talking to all of those people all the time and getting to know them on a one-on-one basis or a three-on-three basis. You know what I mean? Like it's not as personal. Um, so belonging happens in smaller spaces. Participant two said, I don't really feel belonging in Discord itself. It's just with certain people. And participant four said, big servers feel different. You don't really connect the same way. And I would have to agree. I'm a part of a lot of large servers and I get lost in them. I don't think anybody knows who I am. They might see my name in the little side panel, but that's it. I'm just a name. So what does this all mean? Overall, these findings suggest that digital relationships are not inferior. They extend connection rather than replace it. And the same core processes exist: trust, communication, shared experience, and they still apply. They're just in a different context. Now, my research study has some limitations. Obviously, first of all, I'm not a researcher in general. I enjoy doing research. I enjoy um, the process of research, but I'm not a researcher. Um, so some of those limitations are, well, we have the sample size. The sample size is small. I only had 5 people, but technically I had 7. But the other 2 people, they filled out a survey and I didn't use their data in my overall research findings because I wasn't exactly sure how to quantify a survey response to my interview questions because they started as survey questions, but then I turned them into qualitative or into interview questions. So it was a little bit different and I wasn't sure how to combine them. So I digress. Um, A small sample size, the qualitative design, and their reliance on self-reported experiences. Self-reported experiences are great because you get to hear a lot of personal information. You get to hear people's lived experiences and things like that. But unfortunately, self-reported experiences can hold bias. It can hold forgetfulness. It can hold um, you know, you could be upset about something and not want to report on it because it makes you uncomfortable. You know, there's a lot of things that can kind of influence the amount of information or the the accuracy of what you're being told. So this study also only captures a single point in time. It doesn't reflect how relationships evolve over time. It'd be really interesting to see um, how these people feel in 10 years. I guess that's something I could do though. Future research could expand this by including more diverse populations. I tried to get a diverse group of people. I had some Christians, I had some um, people in the LGBTQ community. I had some people who are staunch conservatives. It's very, I felt like it was broad, but with 5 people, you can only get so broad, right? Yeah. So I could also have research can also explore to different platforms. You don't have to use just Discord. You could use, oh, I don't know, um, do other social media. You could do TikTok. You could do Reddit. You know, there's other places that you could potentially do some research on. And additionally, like I was saying earlier, longitudinal approaches would allow us to better understand how these relationships develop over time, which I think would be so much fun. Say you get consent and assent from a 16-year-old and the parents and them, and then you follow them until they're, say, 36, and you see how what happens and what kind of like roller coasters they go on over that time. Excuse me. Um, I think there's also room to explore how online belonging connects to mental health and well-being. It'd be interesting to see if um, the friendships that people make online help or not help their mental health um, and their well-being. It would be really interesting. So practical implications, these findings suggest that online communities can serve, may provide meaningful social support for adults, emotional support, and belonging for adults. For some individuals, especially those who experience social anxiety, maybe people who have disabilities, who are way far, far away from big communities, so they have, you know, geographic isolation, um, or people who just have difficulty maintaining in-person relationships. You know, some people just struggle with that. Um, Digital spaces, you know, can provide access or, you know, accessible opportunities for meaningful connection. And this research also highlights the importance of recognizing online friendships as legitimate social relationships rather than viewing them as inherently less meaningful than in-person friendships. You know, they're different, but they're not less. And participants, you know, they consistently describe these relationships as emotionally significant, as deeply integrated into their daily lives. Professionals like therapists, educators, other community leaders, they would benefit from considering how online communities contribute to emotional well-being, um, identity development, and social support. You know, it would be good for them to understand it so that that can help influence and push them to reach people in different areas. Um, so, you know, rather than replacing offline connection, these spaces, they may expand opportunities for belonging and reduce feelings of isolation for many adults. You know, I'm an autism mom and my life is very lonely. I have a handful of in-person friends. Um, a few understand the whirlwind that is autism life because they are also autism families. But even then, it's very lonely. You know, it's hard because um, I don't have the ability to do certain things for people or with people because I have my son, and I can't put him in certain situations. I don't want to put my daughter in certain situations with him. Like it's very convoluted. So these online spaces have really helped me come out of my own little autism bubble and feel like I have my own little space that's just mine, and it's been really nice. So the big idea, at its core, this study suggests that connection is not limited by physical space. And what I learned, conducting this research taught me that research is far more human and emotionally layered than I originally expected. I've done research before. I've done a few other research studies, and one was qualitative, one was quantitative, and I feel like this one was the most personal that I got out of all three. Um, like while statistics and existing literature are important, qualitative interviews allowed me to hear emotional depth behind people's experiences in their own words. And I thought that was beautiful. I love hearing people's stories. My very first participant told me about it, it jogged a memory for him of someone he met in high school and how important that relationship was, even now, even though he's, lost contact and things like that. But the story he told me was gorgeous. It was so heartfelt. This project also really challenged some of my own assumptions about online relationships because I have all these online friendships, but I still have I feel like I have that stigma in the back of my head that, oh, these are just my online friends. I wish I had real friends, real friends, but they are my real friends. I came away with a much deeper understanding of how meaningful digital communities can be. Um, even though I'm already in them. But particularly for adults seeking connection, consistency, and belonging, these digital spaces are amazing. And personally, this experience also strengthened my interest in human connection, um, interest in communication, interest in um, ways people build relationships across different environments and the different stages of their life. But one of the biggest lessons I would say is I think future students is, or that I would, my advice for future students would, for this class specifically, is choose a topic that you genuinely care about. A passion for the topic makes the long research process feel way more meaningful, way more uh, um, possible, and it really does help sustain your motivation throughout the project. So what it all comes down to is that all those spaces where people connect continue to evolve. And the underlying human need for belonging remains constant. It's not changing, it's not going anywhere. And the study suggests that meaningful relationships are shaped less by physical location and more by consistency, more by trust, more by shared experiences and emotional connection. Um, Here are some of my references. Obviously, it's not the exhaustive list that's in my paper. I'd like to make some acknowledgments. I would like to sincerely thank the participants who shared their experiences, their stories, and their perspectives throughout the study. Their openness, their honesty, their vulnerability, and the willingness to discuss meaningful personal relationships made this project possible. And I thank you for trusting me with the experiences and forms of connection that are deeply personal and not always visible to others. I also would like to thank Christina, our wonderful professor, our guild master, for her guidance, for her encouragement and support throughout the research process. Um, your honest desire to see your students succeed as well as enjoy their time learning is remarkable and deeply felt. So thank you. So my AI disclosure, artificial intelligence tools, I use ChatGPT or Gemini, helped me with brainstorming, organization, and visual formatting ideas. And it helped me edit throughout the development of this presentation. Sometimes I tend to be really long-winded. Sometimes I have a hard time putting things in bullets. Um, without over elaborating. Obviously, my presentation is 25 minutes, so I apologize for how long-winded I am. But all the research, all my analysis, all the interpretations, and everything that I wrote, my final writing, it was all me, and finalized by me. So um, I love you all. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Um, I wish you all the very best and very good luck for your future endeavors. And thanks for being my friends, on my online friends. Bye.